All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Eye of the Needle Chronicle. This chronicle is the first of the chronicles I'm doing for a reading, so if you like it, please let me know. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff, so that way I know that this is good and something that we should do more of. Maybe even let me know what chronicles you want me to do next. But this chronicle is the chronicle I wanted to start with because it is a chronicle I've referred to a lot. It actually comes from the Frigates of Eve book. And I don't want to spoil anything about why right now, but it seemed very obvious to me that this had to be the first one I read because they added the Frigate of Eve book and I think even some stuff from Eve Source into the Eve Universe website, which means that these are now available, I believe, for the first time without a paywall. So here we are. Eye of the Needle. In a world. No. Pureblind region. X70MU system. The Sanctuary School. XTAC70MU2. Moon 7. YC112, which is 2010. 77. Zakari Kovalis stepped out of his ready room, still fiddling with the seal-tight fastener on his capsule suit. By the way, before I even begin, I want to point out that I am reading this live, so if I get things wrong or or don't know how to pronounce a word, I am dyslexic, so this is in my hard suit. But this is also therapy, or not therapy, but helpful to me because slowing down and reading it out loud helps me actually be able to read it. All right, let's move on. He looked he looked at his watch and then remembered that he wasn't wearing one. After all, it was in his capsule suit. For a capsuleer, Zakari was both old-fashioned and somewhat absent-minded, particularly outside of the element that was, if not exactly natural, the one he had made his own, the ultra-connected, fluid-filled world of the capsule. By an act of will, he brought up the time readout and the customary corner of his inner vision. Just past noon, plenty of time. Zakari ready room was close by the secure hangar bay that his ship rested in, and he passed through the internal lock to the bay a few minutes later. There she was, the Katydid, his ship and his real home. The Cheetah-class frigate was swaddled by service gantries, but her lines were clear enough. The ship's weathered but distinctive Thucker colors made in contrast with the advanced connectors and special equipment being run into and alongside her. Zakari shook his head slightly and stepped down from the lock entrance to the hangar floor. The Cheetah-class frigate was developed by the Thucker tribe, Zakari's own people, and the flexible platform for covert operations, reconnaissance, and exploration duties. The Katydid was currently rigged as a deep space exploration vessel. Zakari could see a few technicians huddled around the consoles that controlled the tuning of the scanner probe packages. Right in the middle of them was Taya Akira, one of the Sanctuary School's expert in unstable yet transversable wormholes. Zakari smiled to himself and walked over to the island of consoles. Quote, still arguing about how narrow a range of resonant frequencies in exahertz the probes should be tuned to, or whatever it is? Asked Zakari as he caught Taya Akira's eye. The young Sister of Eve scientist rolled her eyes and waved him away. Zakari smiled and watched her a moment longer before strolling towards the ship. He didn't need to know the fine details. He launched the probes and set them into search patterns. He had a good eye for narrowing in on his probe hits, but setting up those custom scanning packages was not his field at all. The Katydid engineering section was accessible via gantry, and he decided to go in that way. He nodded to his flight engineer, Jubal Harada, a taciturn man of vast experience, drawn from working on many different ships in the Vo-Lakat caravan exploration fleet. How's it going, Jubal? She'll fly, Zakari. Zakari nodded and left the engineer to it. Jubal Harada had lost a lot of family when the Lakat Hro Grand Caravan disappeared back during the unstable wormhole incident of YC-111. In a sense, everyone from the Vo Lakat caravan, an offshoot of the larger nomadic fleet, had lost family. Jubal's loss was a lot closer to home, though. He'd still been in the Lakat Hro at the time, just jobbing with the Vo Lakat. His wife and children went missing, with all the rest, and the Lakat Hro fleet disappeared in SL TAC YBS system at the same time as the SAR suffered a main sequence anomaly. What they're talking about is the Apocrypha event, creation of wormholes. Among other things, when that happened, a caravan of Thucker went missing. Zakari had been to SL TAC YBS with other searchers and seen what was left of the first planet. He was of the considered opinion that main sequence anomaly was putting what had happened pretty mildly. The disappearance of the mother caravan in that star system was only the beginning of a great upheaval for the Vo Lakat. The caravan took in scattered surviving members of the Lakat Hro as a matter of course. Leaving engineering, Zakari went up to the crew area to make sure everything was in order. The ship had been modified a lot over the years and was equipped to carry specialist expedition teams alongside the small ship's crew. The crew proper amounted to Jubal and whoever shipped with them as the tech for the mission. A woman named Ava Sosek had come out from the sanctuary with them on this job. She was an astrometrics tech and very experienced in the data analysis side of the work. Zakari and his automated systems took care of the rest of the ship's business. The capsule interface typically cut out crew requirements on board frigates, unless skilled personnel was required for a specific sortie. The sisters were covering the expedition team side of things, as well as providing wormhole mapping specialists, which is where Taya comes in. Zakari glanced down the corridor leading to the sleeping quarters. He smiled wryly and continued forward. He especially wanted to check the survey command center in the prow. The Katydid was an old mark of the Cheetah class, and Zakari had piloted it in service of the Vo Lakat Exploratory Corps for several years. The prow of the Katydid contained a custom sensor equipment, but the standout feature was an enlarged command center. You had to reach it through the crawlway, but there was room in there for two. The main purpose of the center was coordination of survey of exploration missions, particularly those involving expedition teams. As far as Zakari knew, Taya would be up here on her own, just as she had been on the last 5 runs. The sanctuary scientist and her team operated on the basis that she was in charge, as far as Zakari could tell. Zakari looked around the cramped space, checked the diagnostics of the armored shutters closed over the sapphire glass viewports. He shook his head. Being a capsuleer could have some strange psychological effects, including a paradoxical hybrid of agoraphobia and claustrophobia. Zakari suspected that he had had a mild case of it. Zakari glanced at the crawlway light. It was out. Nobody coming up. And it set off back down towards the ship core. Zakari quickly made his way to the crew embarkation lock, cycled through, and rode the gantry elevator down to the hangar floor. He looked over the consoles again, saw Taya and the technicians were still hard at it, and walked back across. The Katydid's ready to fly, Taya. I'll be going under and loading up in 10 minutes. Taya Akira looked up blankly, nodded shortly after visibly replaying the words in her mind, and bent back to her work. Zakari shrugged to himself and headed for the hangar capsule gantry. So, hold on. Spoilers, slight spoiler. Not to this chronicle, but hold on a second. I just want to double check something. Because they throw these things out there. CCP does this a lot with their chronicles. They'll throw in names and not really explain that much about them, knowing that these are people or things that are from elsewhere. And so it's almost like an illusion, right? So, Taya Akira is not a accident, right? So Taya Akira is... oops. Well, whatever. There is a rogue former SOE group called the Pharaohs-Zathera, Pharaohs-Zathera, as in lighthouse. Pharaohs means lighthouse in this case, not like Pharaoh as in Egyptian leader. But this is Taya Akira, and Taya Akira, who is the leader of this splinter cell, was also the person who mysteriously vanished during the rogue drone swarm. Not mysteriously, but got taken by a rogue drone during the rogue drone swarm, just prior to the Triglavian invasions, or the Triglavian discovery of Triglavians in the Abyss, and that has been confirmed as being a Triglavian controlled swarm. So, not an accident. Pretty important person currently at large. Let's get back to the story. Whoops. All right. Sanctuary School, X-Tech 70MU2, Moon 7, Cheetah class frigate, Katydid, YC11277. Lying back in the encapsulation prep couch, Zakari smiled to himself as he pondered the inscrutable Sister Taya. Smart connectors locked into his spinal implants, and the skeletal couch raised him up to the waiting capsule where the series of handler arms gently took hold of him. The couch withdrew, and smart connectors pulled in most of their slack, and the capsule sealed itself. Zakari took a breath and then exhaled steadily, emptying his lungs as the capsule fluid poured in. He held his breath until the oxygenated suspension fluid covered his head, and then inhaled deeply. His adapted throat and nose tissues responded to specific chemical cues in the fluid to suppress the usual reflexes that would resist water entering the windpipe. In a heartbeat, he was breathing the fluid as calmly and easily as you would breathe air. When the capsule's internal monitors confirmed that all was well with Zakari's vitals and the respiration transition, the gantry's handling mechanisms lifted the great egg-shaped fusion of man and machine up and towards the waiting capsule port of the Katydid. This large port behind the bulky sail of the ship accepted the capsule, and the ship's internal handlers took over, guiding the precious cargo inside. Behind it, multiple bulkheads sealed off, and the outer port closed as heavily armored doors swung home and locked itself into place with internal bolts. Zakari became one with the ship in a way that nobody but another capsuleer could truly appreciate. His body senses fell away, and the ship's senses came over him. The capsule had completed its connection routines, and now enclosed in a sheath of armor within its most central of chambers. Zakari's biological systems were now profoundly connected and integrated with the Katydid. In a sense, in a very real sense, Zakari Kovalis was now a Cheetah-class corvette operations frigate called the Katydid. So all you guys who want to make them gender jokes in Eve, and it's like what is it? Not I envision myself. I identify myself as a thrasher. Well, if you're in a thrasher, you do. Zakari sent the ready signal and opened a channel to speak with Sister Taya Akira. Or rather, Zakari's will to speak to the sanctuary scientist was translated into the Katydid's comms connecting to Taya's aural implant and converting his thoughts into words that she seemed to hear as if from an earphone. Ready to go, Sister Taya. Finished up with the scanner packages yet? We're done here. The team is boarding now. Mission parameters are unchanged. Launch at your discretion, Captain Kovalis. Understood. Zakari watched through the ship sensors as the Sanctuary expedition team filled into the crew area and made ready for launch. Taya was on her way to the Prow Command Center, which was typical. As much as he didn't like her being in the crawl space during launch, he decided to wait until she was in the command center before launching. When Taya had settled into her station, Zakari fired up the engines, increasing power to the deflection fields to lift the ship as low pulses of main engine power propelled the ship forward and out of the exit channel. Navigating freely now, the Katydid headed for the primary exit port, pinging a formal departure handshake with one of the station's flight controls in passing. The frigate powered out of the station and immediately began to align on a heading to a specific location within the XTAC 70MU system. Katydid entered the warp moments after lining up with the target coordinates and accelerated to several AU per second for the short coast before decelerating. The ship dropped out of warp after barely a minute of faster-than-light travel. Zakari launched a full spread of scanner probes while putting the ship into a random alignment away from the previous line of travel. He aligned the ship's cloaking device as soon as the probes were launched and set to work. He activated the ship's cloaking device as soon as his probes were launched and set to work coordinating the probes in a pattern designed to locate unstable wormholes as quickly as possible. Probes are away. We're under cloak. Scanning sequence begins now, sent Zakari to Taya Akira. Understood. Probe packages are performing as expected. Specified wormhole resonances are being filtered. I have a hit at volume coordinates on your tracking readout, narrowing down the signature for lock. Your hit is a strong candidate for mission parameters, entering this in the mission logs as provisional candidate 6. Zakari's mouth quirked a wry smile, even as deep in the ship senses as he was, Taya was keen today as on the first mission that they'd flown together. Hold on. I read you. I have a green signature. Warp drive locked on. Take us to visual range, please. Zakari initiated warp to the signature location, bringing the Katydid to 10 kilometers from the mouth of the wormhole the probes had detected. From his own readout, he could tell that this was a wormhole with a signature of the type that their mission was tasked to finding and surveying. Looks like it confirms candidate to me, Sister Taya, he sent to the scientist. Though the comms pickup on the command center, through the comms pickup in the command center, he watched as Taya studied her display before nodding to herself and responding. Agreed. Logging it as confirmed candidate 6. Proceed at your discretion, Captain Corvallis. Acknowledged. Taking us in. Unknown region, candidate system 6, Cheetah class frigate, Katydid. YC 112-0708. They'd been surveying candidate system 6 for the better part of 12 hours, and Zakari could tell that the entire crew in need of a break. It was becoming apparent to all that candidate 6 was not the hoped-for wormhole nexus system that the Sanctuary School had been searching for over the past several months. For his own part, Zakari had become convinced that Candidate 6 was a bust about an hour after they had gone through. Like other candidate systems, it had a Type AO class sun. Usually the innermost planet or two were shattered. This one had a single shattered planet orbiting close in. While the others were various rocky or icy, but intact globes, there were also many signs of sleeper activity and Talokan ruins popping up in the probe scan results. But that was just it. There was nothing different about this, and something told Zakari that this was just another in a series of failed candidates. The expedition team had been hard at work on their screens and up in the Prow command center, analyzing the data that the ship sensors and scan probes were pouring into the computer systems. All to no avail other than to confirm that the system was another of the usual type with wormhole connections permitting a very low mass packet transmission, a fancy way of saying that these things would only allow very small ships through. This aspect of certain hard-to-find systems on the unstable wormhole network was a key reason for using a ship like the Katydid. So it's a frigate wormhole. I don't know if you caught that. It's a frigate wormhole into a shattered wormhole system. Zakari was about to call for a ship-wide rest period when Ova Sosek pinged him. The astrometrics tech hadn't had a lot to say so far. He took the call, guessing she'd reached similar conclusions to him and intended to say as much. Zakari here. What's up, Ava? I've been going over this data streams, Captain. It's much the same kind of thing as before, but there's one transmission I think that you should take a look at. Oh? Flag the isolated data for me then. I'll check it out. I was about to call a rest. Zakari's curiosity was piqued as transmissions were not exactly unusual in these systems. Sorry, yeah. There was plenty of sleeper structures and drones sending out a lot of data, not to mention some of the older stuff, the Talican ruins and such, transmitted all sorts of crap. But, well, probably not crap from Teya's point of view, he supposed. Already flagged it for you. Isolated data stream VK947 TAC YC112 0706 TAC KCS6. Got it, Zakari. Zakari looked over the data in his visual display and mentally did a double take, marveling at Ava Sosik's thing Freud at merely suggesting he take a look at the transmission. Zakari contacted the tech. I have no idea what that word means. Hold on. Composure or coolness. Got it. I see why you wanted me to look at this. If I'm reading this correctly, this is a distress beacon from one of the Lockheed Hero Caravan Nomad class freighters. That's about right? That's the size of it, Captain. It's got an active signal, too. Signal power's pretty low, though. I reckon it's the level that you'd see after the beacon had gone on for a year or so without reactor power. A year or so? You realize what you're saying? Zakari thought about the disappearance of the Lockheed Hero Great Caravan back in March YC111, a little over a year ago. I'm just an astrometrics data tech, Captain. Right, and I'm just a pet coral squid. Have you told Jubal about this? Hells no. I might be new on this ship, but everyone in this exploration fleet knows Jubal's story. Good. We're going to check this out, but I'd rather not have him going all half-cocked. I need to figure out a mission change with Sister Teya, and then have plan to put in front of him. What about you? Any connections? Some friends, some distant family and all that. Nothing immediate, though. My folks were of the Vo-Lakat when they split off. Right. Well, my mob joined up with the Harada Oki, looking for a better life and all that. The Thucker caravans are divided into these, or the Thucker tribe is divided into these caravans. So these are all just names of caravans. That wasn't clear. Clanner, eh? Harada Oki? Smugglers, aren't they? Mostly. I won't deny that they've done some warm work, but at least they're not the fucking Sekel. I hear you. This transmission, though, I'm pretty sure that we can get a quick fix if you task a flight of probes on it. We'll probably need to use combats, though. Ava was referring to combat probes, the name of the probes capable of effectively hunting down ships. Such was the nature of New Eden. These were often the most used in finding hostile vessels, thus its name. Zakari thought that this was about right, even for a big ship as the Nomad class, and was glad of the expanded launcher and spare flight of combat probes that he'd brought along. I'll launch them now. Give them telemetry priority. I'll have to discuss the next steps with Sister Teya. Understood. Zakari took a moment to consider the implications of this discovery. When the Lockheed Hero Great Caravan had disappeared during the wormhole incident back in YC-111, the assumption had been that the entire fleet had been taken out when the SL Tech YBS system Central Star blasted off enough stellar material to shatter the first planet. Only those few who survived elsewhere and who were desperately clinging onto hope believed otherwise. Them and the usual grab bag of kooks and conspiracy theorists claiming that everything from Sanchez Nation kidnapping the caravan en masse to, well, the Lockheed Hero escaping through a wormhole. Could it really be? Sister Teya, I have something that I need to discuss with you. Can we meet up in the virtuality? Zakari felt that this conversation needed to be as face-to-face as possible. Is that necessary, Captain? Teya Akira sounded irritable, which was surprising, given that she'd been at it for... Which wasn't surprising, given that she'd been at it for a 12-hour stretch. I'm afraid so. I'll be able to go over the data Ava has put together more thoroughly. Ava? Has she found something my team missed? Your team wasn't looking for what she found. I'll explain in the virtuality. Zakari watched through the sensors as Teya stood up and arched her back with hands at her hips. Very well. I'll meet you there momentarily. Zakari lost no time in transferring to the virtuality, allowing his ship senses to recede as his consciousness focused on the artifice of a virtual world, while the Katydid was taken care of by a kind of capsular autonomic system. Sister Taya appeared on the simulation screen a second or two later. Okay, Captain Corvallis, just what is so important and complicated that we need to meet here? Taya waved her hands around the room they appeared to be standing in. This was a handsomely equipped data analysis laboratory, furnished with all manners of screens and holoboards. A large holography table in the center of the lab dominated all of this. The two of them were standing at either side of its long axis. This is a simulation of the main sequence anomaly experienced by the primary of SL-TAC YBS on YC-111-0310, in which event the Lakat Haro Great Caravan is believed to have been lost. Zakari gestured to the holography table as it sprang to life and played through the convulsion of the star and the mass ejection that shattered the inner planet of the system. Yes, I'm quite familiar with all of the events of that day. I assume that you have some pertinent reason for bringing up that aspect in particular? You could say that. You're now seeing a holo recording of the Nomad-class freighter Farvoyer. Zakari indicated the slowly rotating representation. She was part of the Lakat Haro caravan supply fleet, equipped as a standard with a jump drive. As far as the records show, she was in the main body of the caravan when SL-TAC YBS blew up. The star did not blow up, said Sister Taya exasperately. What has this all got to do with our mission? The Farvoyer's distress beacon is broadcasting from somewhere in this system. We have it narrowed down to a volume of space close to the outermost planet. The beacon that has been transmitting it built into the ship. Zakari could tell that this revelation had given Taya pause. The sanctuary scientist had startled for a moment, but quickly hit it. That's certainly interesting, but there are many possible explanations for such signals. I'm inclined to assume the simplest explanation, and that is the presence of the Farvoyer, or at least some part of it, in this system. On that assumption, I'm exercising my prerogative as captain to investigate this matter. I'd add that I take the customary duty to respond to a distress signal or signal very serious. Distress call or signal very seriously, regardless of the fact that this signal is from a ship belonging to my tribe. Very well. I can see that it is useless to dispute the matter with you, sighed Taya Akira. She put a hand to her forehead and closed her eyes a minute. In fact, my team should probably get some rest. I would imagine that you and your key crew would be able to I would imagine that you and your key crew would be able to handle this. Exactly. My people won't rest until we figure out what this really is. We'll be fine, though. You and your expedition team should get some rack time in. Fine. If this should turn out to be something more than a sensor ghost or wormhole-boosted signal echo, please wake me. I will, promised Zakari. Candidate System 6, vicinity of 5th planet, Cheetah-class frigate Katydid. YC-112-0708. The Katydid banked as it maintained its close orbit around the slowly tumbling hulk of the Farvoyer. Zakari's simple explanation had turned out to be the right one. The freighter had been basically intact, but sensors indicated that it was cold, dead shell. Most of the ship's internal space was a hard vacuum, and the reactors were very definitely offline. It seemed likely that the distress beacon was running off the backup hydrogen batteries, as suspected given the transmission's power profile. The expedition team was suited up. So was Jabal Harada. Zakari hadn't even bothered to argue about it. One of Sister Taya's team had some experience with basic maintenance aboard frigates and was staying behind. It wasn't exactly ideal, but it wasn't exactly necessary. But Zakari felt it made a point of sorts. In truth, while he had more or less expected it, actually discovering the corpse of the Lakat Haro jump freighter out here had been shocking on a deep psychological level. Everyone felt it, but the Vo Lakat's crew members felt it all the more keenly. Taya here. We're ready to go. Put us as close to the locks as you can and hold position. Understood, replied Zakari, breaking the orbit and taking the Cheetah-class frigate to maintain the relative position 500 meters from the working lock that they decided was the best place for a route to the huge ship bridge, as short as any of the others. Closer inspection of the Nomad class had revealed a lot of damage in the way of punctures, smashed locks, and ports, and one of the two really large tears in the fabric of the great ship's armored outer skin. Going across now, Taya Kira led the expedition team out of the Katydid, and they began to fly across the gap in suit jets. I see you. Looking good. At the lock, no power, but the emergency manual looks okay. But the emergency manual looks okay. Going in. Zakari watched as the team went inside the large lock and closed the outer door behind them. Assuming nothing had power, they had planned to make their way to the bridge via a series of corridors, crawlways, and ladder shafts. We are in. As we expected, this part of the ship is clearly an engineering substation. We're in a repair bay. We should be able to make good progress through the maintenance corridors from here. Understood. Nothing happening outside. No change in sleeper signals either. I guess Farvoyer is not really interesting to them. Sleeper drones react to certain activity and signals thresholds typically. They wouldn't bother watching this wreck, even though I think that they probably investigated it, given the distress beacon. And we're keeping our own signal profile very low, as per mission specs. You think that we'll be good then? I expect so. Of course, we might set something off that attracts their attention if we're careless. If we're allowed to concentrate on the task at hand, that shouldn't happen, though. Zakari got the message and didn't reply, satisfying himself with the monitoring of the team's suit and sensor pack telemetry as they progressed through the ship hull's innards. The team proceeded to the bridge without incident. Damaged as the freighter was externally, it seemed to be that it really wasn't much beyond superficial strike damage. The way to the bridge was straightforward enough, even if it required some climbing due to the lack of working elevators. Right, we're in the bridge. I can see an active panel. Presumably that's the distress beacon interface. Yes, it could be any station. They can all set it off. But it's most likely security. Usually the bridge security officer has primary responsibility for it. Everything in here looks orderly. You're probably right. Let's see. Yes, it's as you say. Looks like emergency power rationing protocols are keeping just this station powered all this time. Let Jubal try entering the override codes. Assuming there's enough juice left in the batteries, you should be able to do what you need to do. Yes, he's taking care of it. Yes, we're in. The ship's pretty much dead. Nothing to contradict your scans here. Nobody's home, I'm afraid. Maybe that's a good thing. Manifest says there are no transfer shuttles left on board. Escape pods are all in place, though. I'm thinking that these people got out fairly clean. Where in the hells would they have gone? There's nothing but snowballs and dead rocks in this system. Jubal said that he left a detailed message behind. He says it contains a lot of sensor and navigation data in the stranded Lockhart Haro compressed encryption. That's so, Jubal. Zakari broke into the team's common channel, having kept to a 1-to-1 with Taya until now. They're alive, Zakari. Elder's living breath. They're alive, and we can find them. The engineer sounded totally stunned to Zakari. The capsuleer was hard-pressed to know what to say himself, mentally shaking himself. He switched back to the one-on-one with Taya. Is he right? Is there enough to work with to actually do that? I'm looking it over in a very personal virtual space. I'm looking it over in a personal virtual space. If we combine this data with the reference database that the Sanctuary has been using to locate our candidate systems, then we probably have something. Actually, running this now, I think that we're talking about a 7th candidate location that's not even in the Sanctuary's list. Sisters Taya was clearly excited. If you're telling me that you've worked out a specific wormhole signature for a system that's not even remotely possible, is where some of the Lockhart Haro escaped to, then we're going there. We're going there right now. Captain Kovalis, I'm in complete agreement. This is a thread through wormhole space that we absolutely have to follow. Epilogue. Sensors indicate several outer planets of various types and inner zones of numerous terrestrials. The innermost pairs of planets show signs of shattering similar to that seen in previous candidate locations. This system stands out as extremely capacious, and probes are returning multiple wormhole signatures. Could it be Lucky 7? Zakari Kovalis, Expedition Vessel Katydid. Excerpt from log on the discovery of the Thera system of YC-112-07-09. So, this was the story of the discovery of Thera, right? And this is one of the things I have always really liked about this, and why I didn't like the fact that it was pay locked, was that this story actually was exposed more to players than basically any other chronicle, because the I'm just gonna have to use this website, IskMogul. I'm going to be using IskMogul's copy of the devlog. This is the dev blog for the release of Thera and the Shatter Wormholes, right? Shatter Wormholes include frigate-sized wormholes, right? That's why it was a frigate hole. But this is the conclusion of that story. This is the missing paragraph. Rough translations through the wormhole conduit to a 7th candidate location. Shields and nanoplating held with minimal erosion. Deployed camera drones and was immediately impressed by the vivid blue glare of the central star, even brighter than typical blue AO types. Analysis shows it to be a subtype AO-IV and qualifying it as a blue subgiant. Extremely turbulent, with many signs of instability in a star and the background radiation of the system. Briefly turned forward, plating transparent with polarizing filters in place, and was struck by the dire beauty of the star. Sensors indicate several outer planets of various types in the inner zone of numerous terrestrials. The innermost pair of planets show sign of shattering similar to that seen in previous candidate locations. This system stands out as extremely capricious, and probes are returning multiple wormhole signatures. Could it be Lucky 7? There you go. So this was the thing that, like, for years, CCP, this reference was made, but if you didn't have Frigates of Eve, you didn't get it, and that made me sad. And so that's why we read the story today. Thank you all for all of you who stuck with it. Thank you for doing so. I know it wasn't like gameplay or whatever, but if you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know. I thought that's a pretty cool story.